Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. On the phone today, I have Dave McGlynn. Dave McGlynn is a friend of mine. We've taught at FDIC, not necessarily together, but at the same time. Dave's an assistant chief of training at Letterkenny Fire Department, and for all you fans out there, not that one. There's actually a military base, Letterkenny, up in Adams County, Pennsylvania. So, Dave, welcome to the show, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on. No, it is not the Hulu show, though often, confused with that. And it's in Franklin County.
County, my bad.
Yeah. No, you're good, brother.
It's one of those border counties that border Maryland. How'd I know?
Right. Yeah. Mason-Dixon line county. Yeah. My name's Dave McGlynn. I've been in the fire service for over 21 years. I am originally from New Jersey. Started out trying to get hired in the FDNY, and then was taking a test for a few cities. Couldn't pass my EMT. It was basically a prereq at the time. So then I started trying to get in the avenue, going on the military side and becoming a civilian firefighter for the military bases. Was fortunate, able to get in the system, working for the Naval Air Station Brunswick, which was in Maine, and moved me and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, all the way up to Maine before the base had closed. And then when the base closed, I ended up getting relocated down to Pennsylvania. Worked my way into a promotion as a captain. I worked at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. We bought our house, had a few kids. Life is good. A promotion opens up for a training chief position over in West Point, the U.S. Military Academy. So I thought, well, I'm going to put in for this job and see what happens. Ended up getting fortunate to get the job, though I didn't think that they were going to offer me the job. And I came back to my wife. I said, what are we going to do here? They offered me the job. She said, well, this is a great opportunity. You should take it. And I took it. And then we were going to move up there because we originally grew up that way. And life turned different ways and ended up working out anyway. Ended up being an assistant chief position open here at Letterkenny, which is only like 35 minutes south of where my house is. And I ended up putting in for the job, got the promotion, and life is good. I own my own teaching company called Passion in Leading. I try to do what everybody does today, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I feel like it's become so consumed and kind of saturated with social media content. But in order to, I guess, stay in the game, you gotta keep doing that. So I share some stuff on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Passion in Leading. Share some motivational stuff and some training stuff if I can. And then, like Dave said before, I've been fortunate enough to teach out at FDIC. I've written for fire engineering. I've taught all over the country, just trying to spread a message about training program development, motivational leadership, how to aspire to be a leader, and what that looks like and stuff like that. And to sum it all off, I would be remiss if I didn't mention I am married to a Puerto Rican, Brooklyn-born wife. And for those of you that don't understand why I lead with that Puerto Rican and then Brooklyn-born, is so you understand that she's a tough girl. She's Puerto Rican and she's from Brooklyn. And we have two beautiful kids. I have a daughter, Angela, and a son, Michael, and that's it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have you. I know, I got to sit in on your class this year at FDIC, and it's a really good class, talking about how you're tying leadership into training and how the training aspect actually builds your leadership, builds relationships, it builds the credibility of yourself and your team, providing that it's done right. And your class kind of ties it all in. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here. You had me on your fire engineering radio show last month, which was pretty cool. It was good to just be on the other end of not having to write questions down and ask stuff, but just to answer stuff. So it's actually pretty cool. So what I wanted to talk about, talk about all the leadership and how you gain that credibility through the training aspect. So one of the things I want to talk about is how can you build your training credit? How can you build your leadership credibility as a leader, an officer? You don't necessarily have to hold rank in order to be a leader, but how can you build that credibility? How can you get that experience of being a leader through training?
It's a good question, because a lot of people, they don't understand. Let's start with the key part of that question is the credibility piece, right? So people understand the importance and the value of that word of credibility. So, well, what do I mean when I say that? Well, what I mean is you can't fake it till you make it in this business. So there are times that we have people that, they promote because they're a yes man or they kissed ass. Dave, by the way, sorry. I mean, I'm not going to try to curse too much, but you know how I talk.
It is okay. It is a fire service based podcast. I have military guys that listen to this, police guys. So I think we'll be okay on that aspect.
Okay,
I haven't gotten any warnings from Apple or Spotify or from
Yeah.
Audible or anything like that. So we're okay. Be your New Jersey self. It's all good.
Yeah.
You remember, I get Frank on here every now and then too. So
That's a good point. Yeah,
it's that whole Northeast
Northeasterner.
mentality thing.
Right. No, so they promote into positions for the wrong reason, and then unfortunately, like what I try to do is I try to use whatever following I have as a format or as a stage to promote that you shouldn't take training as a segue to gaining rank. If you're not passionate about training and you're not somebody who should be hosting or facilitating or managing a training program, then you shouldn't have put in for the job. Same goes with being a company officer and then a chief officer, right? So the credibility piece is the most important piece. So the how-to is simple. Easily put through training, education, and experience. So now, whether you're in a department that runs thousands of calls and you have that opportunity to get that experience, you may not have the same opportunity to gain the education and training piece of it because you're so busy. So there's a flip side to it, right? Then you could be in a department that doesn't run enough, but has all the opportunity to do the training and education piece of it. So we need to try to marry that balance on what's applicable to what we do in the field and train on those things so that we continue to be operationally ready. But in order to promote, you need to have gone through those steps. You can't just go and take a class and get a certificate or read a book and score 100 on the promotion exam and think that now makes you qualified to lead others. Not in fire and emergency services. And I know it happens. I know your listeners are listening like, well, yeah, it shouldn't happen, but I have it. I know you do. That's the reason why we have these conversations. That's the reason why there's relevance into listening to these podcasts, is because we have an opportunity as human beings and as good stewards to the fire service to change that cultural dynamic. And that is through training, experience, and education. So before you go and promote, it is very vital that you've gone through those steps of learning the job, continuously learning the job, understanding how it's applicable in the field, and gaining that experience. Now, experience also, and I'm not trying to be long-winded, but just it constitutes a substantial answer. The experience piece of it isn't just fighting fire. This is another misinterpretation or misconception. I don't care. I do care, but understand me when I say this. I don't care if you fought 1,000,006 fires. The experience level is also understanding how to deal with people. And the people are inside of our companies, inside of our departments, inside of our firehouse, on our crew, and also the general public. Dealing with people, everyone's different. So I use an example. I say I can hand somebody a Coca-Cola bottle, and I can say, tell me 5 things about that Coca-Cola bottle. And I can hand 5 people a Coca-Cola bottle and tell them all, hey, tell me 5 things about that. Don't share it with each other. Just when I call on you, I want you to tell me. And all 5 people are going to have 5 different answers. Some may be similar, but they're all going to have 5 different answers about one item. Okay? So the point there is everyone sees the world differently. If you're going to try to be a leader, you need to gain that experience and that education into how to deal with people so that you are a credible source. Because if they don't trust you, are you really leading them, or are you just kind of telling them what to do and they're just trying not to be insubordinate? So that would be my answer to that.
You brought up something when you were talking, and I jotted down a couple of things. And I want to talk about the training aspect in being a leader. You have, and I know it's runs rampant in the fire service all over the country, where you'll have people that come in and they do their probation time, and then they just start taking classes. And the only reason to take classes is to promote quickly. We've seen it a lot where they'll spend, a couple of years as a firefighter, and then they sit for the lieutenant's exam, and then they pass the lieutenant's exam, and then they get promoted to lieutenant. And they do that for a couple of years. Then they take some classes, and they get that 2 years under their belt, and then they promote to captain. And they still haven't learned how to be, a good driver. They haven't learned how to be a good lieutenant, and now they're in a captain's position. The next thing you know, they're sitting down there for that 2 years, and they want to promote to, battalion chief. And you get these people that promote so fast that they haven't had a chance to learn the job. I know it happens everywhere. I'm not saying that I'm the exception to the rule, but I spent 7 years as a firefighter. I learned how to be a driver. And then I took the test for a master firefighter, which is kind of like a technician spot. And then I sat in that position for about 5 years, learned how to operate a truck company, how to really operate an engine company and a rescue squad. And then in that 5 years, then I took the lieutenant's test, and I stayed a lieutenant for about 6 years. And I really got a chance to learn the job and how do you deal with people, because there's not a lot of classes that the fire department offer of how to deal with people and their personalities and issues that arise. As let's face it, as firefighters, we definitely get ourselves into some situations that you would have never thought people would get themselves into. So how do you navigate that? And I stayed a lieutenant for about 7 years, where I felt fairly comfortable with that job and running calls and leading my people on incidents as well as in the station. And then I sat for the captain's test, and I never had a desire to be a battalion chief. So I was a captain for about 9 years before I finally took the test. So there was a lot of people that came in well after me that outranked me, which it didn't matter to me. I want to say that what I had to offer in the position was where people could count on me to do the job, so it didn't matter that I was outranked. I never really looked at that. But I see these people that move through the ranks pretty quick. So what would be your advice, getting to the question of these people that want to, rise through the ranks at meteoric speeds before they ever had a chance to deal with learning how to deal with people and their different personalities, how they help solve issues, how do you deal with the administrative stuff, and then to the people that actually are sitting in those positions now that don't have that experience, how do they gain that experience?
That's another great question. So first, and this is going to be the biggest challenge for somebody because of humility, right? Humility is important. Being humble is important. So the first thing I would say to anybody who wants to aspire to lead others is ask yourself why. Why do you want to do it? And if it's because you want to make more money or because you want to be in charge, those aren't the right answers. So you got to start there, right? But just listening to what you were saying before. So I 100% agree with you. I oftentimes say this. So I'm young for being in the rank and the position that I'm in, and people always tell me, I'm not apologizing for it because I've been fortunate to gain success, but that's based off of, and I'm not being arrogant, it just is what it is. That's based off of my level and drive to truly absorb everything I can in the time that I'm able to do so that I can continue to move forward. Why do I want to lead? The question that I would asking myself and giving myself that assessment is, as cliche as it sounds, I want to give people an opportunity to be in a position of influence to help them have somebody that's going to advocate for them and give them the opportunity to be progressive and be taken care of. I want to establish an environment where there's trust and people are appreciated, so that we're not losing people trying to transfer out to different things or different places. I want to be the leader for my people that I wanted. And I know that sounds corny, but that's why I have tried to promote. Rewinding back to what you had said before about, as simple as it is, it's in my class. I say, if you've never driven an engine or a truck, you shouldn't be teaching people how to be a driver operator. Well, the same thing goes for leadership. If you're going to promote to a company officer position and you're riding that front right seat, if you didn't take enough time or gain enough experience in being an operator or a chauffeur, then how the hell are you going to be able to tell in good conscience your driver where they're supposed to position the apparatus, where they should lay out, where the nearest hydrant is, how they should lay out? You don't know, because you took too much time in trying to gain the information you needed just so that you could be in your rank or in your new position, but you don't actually know how to lead the people into what you're supposed to be doing. That stuff comes with experience. If you've never driven an engine, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get people that are going to disagree with me, but I don't care. I absolutely believe that being a driver should be a prereq to being a captain or a lieutenant. If you've never driven, how the hell are you going to know what that driver's supposed to be looking at while you're in the front with them? You need to know. And that comes with the experience of having wheeled the engine or the truck, having positioned it, having thrown, having put a ladder to a building or a bucket if you're driving a tower truck or an engine, positioning properly so you get the most bang for your buck with the hose that's coming off the rig. All that stuff, the captain or the lieutenant, you got a good chauffeur, it's real easy. You can go into a blind and they'll do the work for you. But if you got a young kid who's just become a driver and they're like, hey, Lou, or hey, Cap, do you want me to hook up to this hydrant, or, where should I go? And you're like, I don't know. Let's see what command wants. Well, what the hell are you doing in the front seat? Let's see what command wants. Like, sure, maybe command might have something different than what you have to offer. But I don't know about you. I mean, not you, Dave. I know you, but, people listening, when you're running command, you're octopus arms. You got 8 different things that you got your eyes set on, and you're giving 8 different directions and trying to figure out who I need to bring in and who's coming and how many people are they bringing with staffing. I don't have time to tell you where to position your apparatus. That's up to, I'm assuming that my lieutenant or captain and my driver have that part figured out. So, you should not be riding that front seat if you've never driven the engine or the truck. So that's important right there, just that you had talked about that. I believe that providing people do it for the right reasons, and that's a small percentage. I don't want to say the word because it seems taboo or stigmatic, but you can promote quick in regard that you're doing it the right way and that you're somebody who understands the experience level of and the skill set level of what it is that we do. But it's such a small percentage of people that, for the majority of those folks that want to promote so fast, like I said, make sure you're doing it for the right reason. Don't just want to put it on so that you can say you're in charge. Don't just take a class so that you can understand the information or the content in the promotion exam. You take time to actually learn the job, because firefighters, they're a unique breed. They're going to be able to sniff out if you're faking it. And if they don't trust you to be the one to give them the direction of, hey, I want you to park your apparatus here, well, then there's no mutual trust. So if I'm the captain and I sucked at driving, or I didn't really take any time to understand the importance or the value of, and we're just using driving as an example, of the ins and outs of that, and then I say, hey, I want you to go to the CB corner, and I want you to park the engine here, and driver's like, get the hell out of here, bro. You don't know what you're talking about, Joker. I'm going to park over here. We break the whole process right there. The scene is now subject to disaster because of that lack of mutual trust. So, you need to understand the importance of mutual trust if you're going to try to promote, because if they don't trust you, it ain't going to work. And if they know that you don't trust them, it's certainly not going to work.
Yeah, I was jotting down some notes. There's a couple things that I wanted to go over. You had said that make sure you're promoting for the right reasons. You don't promote because you want to make more money or you want to be in charge. I equate that. I tell people, I said, don't have kids just for the tax break, because you're going to be sorely disappointed with that. One of the other things that you had talked about is knowing how to do the jobs if you're going to ride the front seat. And I'm going to take credit for this principle that I made up, even though I've seen other people use it, and I'm probably not the person that invented it. But I clearly used to tell people, think of this job like the McDonald's principle, meaning if you're a manager of McDonald's, you need to understand how to operate the fry machine, the shake machine, how to cook hamburgers, how to use the computers. So as that manager, you need to have a working knowledge of all the jobs that happen in that restaurant. So if somebody doesn't show up, you can jump in and help flip burgers, or you can jump in and help get fries, or use the cash register. It's the same thing as an officer. You need to have a working knowledge of engine company operations, as well as what is that driver thinking when they're going to pump that apparatus. What if they've got a certain amount of water coming in? How many lines are they going to be able to support? Am I going to be able to pull 3 lines off of this piece of apparatus in order to work on this fire with other companies coming in? It's the same thing with the truck company. I need to understand it. How do I get the outriggers down if I have to help the drivers set up, especially when we're working with minimum crews? Am I going to be a hindrance where that driver is going to be setting up his side, but then coming around and correcting all the things that I'm not doing correctly on my side? So it's going to take twice as long. What is the responsibilities of a truck company? What do I expect of the guy or the gal riding third? Am I going to be able to lead them? Do I know what jobs and tasks that the truck has to do right now? If I go to the roof, am I going to be able to lead a group of people to get a roof opened up? What am I looking for? Same thing with the rescue squad. Yeah, anybody can put a tool in their hand and pop a door, but what if we have to get more technical into a rescue? Do I have the skills to lead the crews if I don't know what they're doing to begin with? So then that all comes back to humility. You do have people that get promoted, and they spent 7, 8 years on an engine company, and they get promoted into a house that has a truck and a rescue squad and an engine, and they may have to move around to different pieces of apparatus. So that's where you've got to swallow your pride. You have to make sure you show some humility and talk to the firefighters or the technicians that are assigned to that station to do this stuff routinely, saying, hey, I'm going to need your help guiding me through this so I can get my feet underneath me and get comfortable, as we move forward. But like you said, if you try to fake it, they're going to sniff it out right away, and immediately you're going to be branded as somebody who doesn't know the job. You're a terrible officer. You don't know what you're doing. You're trying to fake it. So we need to rely on our people to help us, and in return, we get better. And this is if you're promoting through the ranks quickly and you don't have a lot of experience underneath your belt. So we need to be able to tell people, hey, I'm not super familiar with all this stuff, so I'm relying on you guys to bring me up to speed. To me, if somebody were to do that, that shows me that, hey, this guy really wants to learn the job, and they're relying on me to kind of lead and help. So you're kind of giving that, empowering your people below you to become leaders as well. You don't have to hold rank to be a leader. And then finally, as an officer, even if you're a seasoned officer, and we talk about succession planning and everything, it's your responsibility to make sure that your people are spun up and good with the different things that you offer in the fire service. So for instance, if you work in a downtown city urban department, you got a hydrant on every corner. But what do your guys know about rural water supply and tanker operations and folded tanks and drafting and things like that? As an officer, it's your responsibility to make sure that your people get that training as well, because what if they work overtime at a company in a rural area and they're assigned to drive an engine, and the last time they drafted was 8 years ago in their pumps class? So you're responsible to make sure that your people are good, so when they start to promote, they're familiar with that stuff. It's the same thing with heavy rail or metro, subway systems. You might not have a subway that runs through your jurisdiction, but in your county there is a subway or a heavy rail that runs through there. Your people need to be familiar with all the aspects that could be thrown at them. It shouldn't be the first time that they see something is during an emergency. So a lot of stuff that you said, there's a lot of stuff to unpack, and this will go as far as if you're an officer that promoted through the ranks quickly. One of the things that we're going to talk about is it's okay not to know something, providing that you tell people, hey, I don't know, I need your help with this, or hey, I don't know, where can I go find this information, and start to learn.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right in my wheelhouse now with what you were saying. For your listeners, that's another thing. So outside of what we just discussed before about taking the time to have done the job in order to lead those people, there's bigger departments where you will promote outside of the house that you grew up in, and they'll put you on a different crew and stuff like that, right? This is where I talk about the networking thing. And to me, I get so frustrated with it because I feel like networking is such common sense. But unfortunately, there's obviously a need for me to talk about it because, I've written about it and I've been able to teach about it and people keep reading it and booking it for me to present it because there's a need for it. And it goes off of what you just said. Just because you now have rank doesn't mean that you're not a human being. So as a firefighter, if I had a captain that came to me and said, hey, I'm new to this crew, I don't really understand the dynamic of this or what it is, or I'm new to this area, can you and I go out and you kind of show me around so this way I understand the streets and stuff like that, whatever it is. I would love to help that person. And I have done that, when I got the position up at West Point. I went up there in a chief officer rank, and I had firefighters bringing me around the area to show me the area and explaining to me, how Orange County worked and all this stuff. And then when I got the promotion down here, I went to two of the different captains who have been a captain here for a while. They both had put in for, or one of them had put in for my position, and I had gotten the promotion over him. And I came to them with all humility. Hey, listen, I'll let you go through your stages of grief or whatever, but in order for this to work, we both got to work together, and I need you to tell me what you think I need to know, because this is a new area for me. So I need to know what I'm supposed to say on the radio and how I'm supposed to say that, and what our mutual aid procedures are and who we work with, and what the mission is for our first due, and all these little nuances that you don't realize are important details. They make or break you. You could be the most salty guy in the world, but if you talk on the radio like an imbecile, as much as we like to say that shouldn't be important, well, unfortunately it is important because guys will think that you're a buffoon if you sound like a clown on the radio, so that will diminish your leadership or your following right there. So swallowing your pride, like you said, taking that time to know who your subject matter experts are, and tapping into them and utilizing those resources. So not only will it help you improve what you do, but it also improves the culture. It builds trust within you and your crew and your neighboring community, and it makes everybody well-rounded. And it's all free, you're just having a conversation and people are just helping you through the process where you're able to develop yourself better. Now, there's another side of that coin. Don't just rely on everybody to do your job for you. Have them help you get up to speed, but then once you've gotten the grasp of it, you got to do it. And if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for help, but don't just be like, well, I don't know, I'm not from this area, so that's what my driver's for, or that's what my captain's for, or whatever. No, that's not how this works. Rely on them to try to help you out. get you acclimated, but don't just dump off your responsibilities on them, because, again, that will certainly make you diminish your following.
Yeah, I want to talk about you'd made mention that you competed for a position, you and some other people, and you get the position, and you came with your humility, saying, "Hey, I know we both competed for this position. I got promoted, but we need to work together in order to make this work. I want to rely on you for the expertise that you bring to the table." Now that guy has a choice. He can internalize or retreat back into himself, saying, "See, I should have gotten this position all along. That guy doesn't know what he's doing," or recognize that you are coming to him saying, "I don't know everything, but I'm going to rely on your expertise to make sure that this company works." And that's the bigger picture, is making sure that the company is doing right for the organization as well as for the community. So conversely, if you ended up not getting that position and somebody else got the position, whether you think that guy should have gotten it or not, and that person comes to you, you have a very important choice to make of, are you going to swallow your pride and put your ego in check and help that person be the best they can be because it's a reflection on you and your crew? Or are you going to say, "See, I should have gotten that position and it should have been mine. I'm way better than that guy." And now your ego is running your thought processes and how you're going to approach your job. And guaranteed that if that ego continues, you're not going to get the next promotion. Nobody's going to go out of their way to help you when you start mumbling to other people, spreading rumors, talking gossip and things like that. So you do have that choice to make on both sides. So it shows a lot of courage to be able to say, "I don't know everything and I'm going to need your help. Yes, I know we both competed for this position and I got it. I got it over top of you, but I don't want that to be a stumbling block." As well as that person admitting that, "Okay, I didn't get it. Maybe I can learn something from you. I'm going to teach you what I know to help you, so we're all better." And when the next position comes around, you may be throwing a good word. "Hey, this guy really needs to be looked at. He's my right-hand man. He's going to make a great leader." And then you help promote your people into different positions. So I think that that's important, that when we talk about ego and we talk about pride, you really have to be able to recognize it in yourself, how to put it in check, and be humble.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to piggyback off what you just said, another thing for the people listening to this is, in the event that you got passed up, and it happens, and you got bested but not necessarily bested, because that happens. Sometimes the wrong choice is made. I'm not going to be ignorant and say, "No, whoever they pick is the right person." Like that, it happens. This is life. Sometimes we got bested for the wrong reasons. Post you being passed up, every day is an interview. So quickly, I'm going to tell you a brief story. Within the Department of Defense, especially in the Army, if you're already in the system and you already work for another base, you can promote to another base. Similar to how you did things when you were down in Montgomery County, you promote, but you can be assigned to a different battalion in a different section of where you were a captain within the county. Same thing, we can be a chief or a captain or whatever at one base, and then put in for a promotion at another base. Because the Army is global, not just in the confines of local areas, we ended up selecting a captain from Alaska. He came down from Alaska, never having been from here before. And our internal guy, we had a few internals to put in for, but one of the internal guys was going to be assigned to this captain, and that captain was now going to be his supervisor. And one of those internals that had competed for this promotion was passed up, and his name is Scott, and he received this new captain and embraced him better than anybody else on the crew did. He made all attempts to try to show him the administrative process because this particular individual was, was acting as a captain while there was a vacancy. He tried to explain to him how things went in Franklin County, and went over the area familiarization, and went over the way we pack hose, the type of hose that we have, the length of the hose that we carry, and the equipment we carry, all the ins and outs, right? Literally took time to take this guy, kind of mentor this guy, and unofficially mentor this guy. And then another captain retired this past winter, and it was just a without a doubt easy decision. And this was unanimous. I mean, from the guys on the floor all the way up to the director of DES, everybody knew that Scott was the guy because of how he responded to being passed up a year before. And he basically walked into the position, even though it was competitive because that's the way we have to do stuff. There was just no doubt in our mind that this guy was the guy. And now he's a captain, and he's hit the ground running. He's doing well, and he's on a completely different crew than what he was on. And he's being received well because people understand that he has humility, and he understands people, and he's willing to work with people and partner up with people and build teams. That's going to help him be an effective leader. Had he have reacted like others have, or in that case, like others did that were internal, and as soon as the guy that came down from Alaska screwed up for the first time, everybody said, this is why we shouldn't bring people here from the outside and blah, blah, blah. And, they made the same comments about me when I got here. First call that I was riding the buggy and I was in command for, I had to follow the engine to the address because I didn't know where we were going. And, I had called up the wrong way. I called up on the radio the way I would talk on Orange County because heaven forbid we all talk the same, So I had an individual who was making those comments, in the back of the rig, this guy, blah, blah. This guy teaches at FDIC. This guy is going to be our assistant chief. Do you believe this? And I was fortunate that I was able to get through that mindset and that attitude that people are very receptive to me now. And now when I screw up, they're more like forgiving and like, hey man, this is what you should have said, or this is where this building is. I know you haven't been there before. The reason why I share that is because humility is important, but to a certain extent. So I want to caution people when we talk about humility and being passive are two different things. So you don't want to be passive. You don't want to be somebody who's going to be a leaf in the wind and people are going to be able to walk over. Humility is that I recognize that there's things that I don't know, that I'm going to rely on the crew to try to help me get to where we need to be so that we can all be successful, and that I can be a good focal point for you and a good steward and cheerleader for you, that you take pride in the organization and the department because I helped you look good. Passive is exactly what it is. You're owned. Nobody cares about whether or not you're in command. You're kind of just filling the spot. You're like the substitute teacher. The cat's away, the mice will play type thing. So you need to understand that balance too. That fine line of accept the humility, but you're still in charge. So you need to be in charge. There are still decisions that need to be made. So you need to make decisions. So assess those decisions based off the information you gain while being humble, but. And make no mistake, you still have to be the one to make the decision.
Yeah, I think it's important that people recognize and understand that it's okay not to know something. And again, it all goes back to if you don't know something and you try to fake it, firefighters are good at spotting right away that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So it's okay not to know. And it's okay to rely on people that have been around for a while to give you that information. I remember clearly when I got promoted to captain, and I was sent to a relatively slow station. But we got to do a lot of training. You know, that kind of broke up the boredom of being in the station, of being able to just go out into other people's areas and look at buildings and talk about stuff. We were fortunate we were able to have a lot of live fire training evolutions, because in the area that I was in, it was a pretty high dollar area where people would buy smaller houses, knock them down, and build these McMansions on the property. So we were able to get some of these smaller houses to train in and sometimes to burn in. And I clearly remember having the battalion chief from another battalion that wanted to come down and train. And this particular person pulled me aside and said, "Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I've spent a majority of my career on the medic unit, so I'm not as familiar with the firefighting aspect as I should be." And this person said, "So I'm going to get my gear on. I'm going to come in with you, and I want you to teach me some stuff. Tell me about what the fire is going to do. Tell me how you would find a fire if you can't see it." And you know, listeners might be thinking like, "Oh my God, how can that person be a battalion chief?" It happens. It's like being on an engine company your entire career, and you get promoted to go to a rescue squad. Well, and you have never done that before. You're kind of lost. So it's the responsibilities of the crew members that are familiar with that stuff to help your fellow firefighters, your fellow officers, to be good. Because again, when you look at issues, when you look at people from the 50,000 foot level, what is good for the department, what is good for the organization, and ultimately what is good for the citizens that we're sworn to protect? You know, they expect when 911 is called, they show up with a professional crew, whether they're getting a paycheck or not, to help them on the worst day of their life. And the only way that we can be good at that is through training and to make sure that we have each other's backs. So it's okay not to know. There's a fine line between not knowing enough to do the job and taking that job and then never trying to improve yourself because your ego gets in the way, because you're afraid to ask for help, because you're afraid to say you don't know something, thinking that those people are going to think down of you. It may happen, but for the majority of the firefighters and the officers that are out there, we're really quick to pick up the mantle to help one another in order to be better. I saw that a lot in Montgomery County before I retired when I was assigned to the 1st Battalion. Those guys trained every day, and the last thing they would ever want to do is not only do something that would be shown a negative light on their company, they don't want to show a negative light to the whole battalion, because they took really great pride in being part of that battalion and part of a company in that battalion, that they did not want to make a mistake. So when we talk about pride, it's okay to have pride in order, as long as it's constructive pride, as long as it's pride that shows how much you love the job and how far you're willing to go to make sure that everybody is on the same page and they do a good job. So again, circling back, it's okay not to know, but you need to go find that information out. So the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, we talk about, when you're promoting up pretty fast, how do you learn how to take care of that administrative stuff? I think learning how to ride the fire engines and telling people to pull a line or grab forcible entry tools and force a door or cut a roof, I think that's more of the easier part of the job. But when it comes time to do administrative stuff where you're dealing with people, taking care of the mundane administrative things that have to be done, helping to solve issues in the fire service, how would you help somebody, whether it be through training or to actually get a message out to the masses to learn how to do all those things that don't involve getting on a fire engine and putting out a fire?
So another great question. It's an important question because you're absolutely right. So it's not to downplay the importance of skills, but they are easier to learn because of the availability of training on those things. For the most part, firemen like to do fireman stuff. So people are going to want to show you the skill set stuff. Plus, there's a bunch of classes where it's all skills, right? The admin stuff, there isn't enough. And even the classes that have them, like I said before, sometimes people will just go through those classes just so that they can get the promotion or pass the promotion exam. and they don't actually retain any of the stuff, right? So I'll tell you, what worked for me, and it doesn't make it right, was trial and error. So I'll tell you what made it right, well, what my plan to make it right is in a second, but I'll tell you how I learned the administrative side. So without knocking anybody, but it's just the way I talk, so I'm just going to be honest. I don't care, if somebody wants to be upset, they're gonna complain. It is what it is. Dave, you can give them my phone number, and if it's somebody that's going to complain, they already have my phone number, because I'm going to talk specific about not individual names, but just the organization. So when I got to West Point, the assumption or expectation was that I was going to come in there and already know all the administrative angles of my position. And my position was it was an administrative chief position, and I was to facilitate and manage the training program. They were using emergency reporting software. So this was 6 years ago, or a little over 6.5 years ago. So now everybody is using ER for the most part. Where I had been a captain before I promoted up there, we were using fire programs. That's literally the name of the program, fire programs. So I had no idea how to use ER. And the attitude was, we sat down and we showed you this is what we do. Well, when you sit at somebody's desk and they go over it real fast talking because they already get it, and they go over it in 7 to 10 minutes, and then the other 20 minutes is just them venting about or gossiping about their own personal quirks or whatever, they can't technically say, well, I spent a half hour with you going over this. Like, no, you didn't. You spent like 7 minutes and you went through it real fast. And, you already had it figured out, so it was a speeded through process of you navigating the system, and I didn't understand it. So, having been there for a little over a month, I recognized that I was very ill prepared, and it was affecting my organizational skills in being the facilitator and manager of the program. And this was showing, and it looked really bad on the floor. And then when we would have staff meetings, it looked even worse, that I wasn't able to run reports properly because I didn't understand how to do the administrative side. So fortunately for me, when I took that job, I was still living in Carlisle, but I was commuting up to West Point. So I would stay at West Point for 3 or 4 nights at a clip, even if I was off duty. And I would just get on the computer and I would make all of these different reports and run all these different ways of doing stuff until I figured out a system that worked for me. And once I figured out that system, it actually ended up kind of spearheading the process of, now a lot of Army training officers and my successor up at West Point, they all used that same format and same system on how I did it. And that was through trial and error. That was just me creating a bunch of mock reports, that I had to keep archiving because they would get all jacked up and wrong, and just playing with it until I could figure it out. But to the point, now what I try to do is this is just one example using ER. There's 1,000 things as far as administrative duties go and reporting and stuff. I'm just using that as one example. So now what I do is I have my system on how I track the training. So I have sat with the company officers and explained to them, this is how I track training. This is how you run reports and query reports so you can see who's deficient, so that you can, be the company officer and make sure that they make up whatever they're deficient in. Then when I have higher headquarters people conduct an inspection, I can then, with good confidence, pull up the report and say, here's the numbers. Here's who's completed what, who hasn't completed what. And they're all true numbers, and they're all relevant, and it was easy, and it took me seconds to be able to show that to them. That was because of trial and error that I was able to have that success. I don't feel that was right. I don't want anybody else to have to do that. I'm okay with you figuring out a better way because, you're a human being. But I'm going to show you the system that I put in place so that you can make it your own and figure out from there. And what I'm doing is I'm passing that knowledge on to people so that they understand the importance of the administrative process, The importance of good reporting and good data tracking and entry. Because we're not doing a good job at that. We promote people into chief officer rank positions. We take them off the engine or the truck. Well, they're not pulling hose. They're not throwing ladders anymore. They're not hooking ceilings. They're pushing a desk and they're on a computer. And if we didn't teach them how they're supposed to do things in an organized fashion, then they're certainly going to fail. And we can't get pissed off at them when we're like, well, you don't have the, where's the report? Or, these numbers don't add up. Well, would you be mad at the firemen if they didn't know how to pull the hose properly, but they had a captain that just sat around and didn't show them how to do it? I wouldn't be mad at the fireman. I'd be mad at the captain. That's your job, bro. You should have showed him how to pull that hose properly and how it gets packed properly. So the same thing goes for our administrators. If we have chief officers who outrank these other chief officers, you can't have this expectation that they're going to shit out a report in perfect context if you didn't teach them how they should be doing it, or if you didn't deliver the expectation of how you want to see that report or that information captured. So we need to do a better job as we promote into how the training needs to adjust. Now the topics go from skill set training and operational fun stuff to now the administrative stuff, the clerical stuff. And it's not sexy. Everybody wants to be the chief until they see what they actually have to do, and then nobody wants to do it anymore. They just want to be able to wear a white helmet and be in charge and talk on the radio. Well, yeah, that's 10% of what it is that you actually have to do. Being able to organize the schedule, being able to make sure that you have the gaps filled, making sure that you have the people assigned to the apparatus properly, being able to make sure that, you're not over-inundating people with overtime and mandating people constantly because you got to backfill overtime, being able to organize, making sure that the staffing levels are the way they're supposed to be. All this stuff is done through data entry and through administrative skills, and because we're not teaching those to people, that's where we fail. That's where the perception on the floor is like, oh, well, these guys can't even count. How hard is it to count? Like, you're right. That is the perception. It's an ignorant perception, but it is the perception. I got it. But I have a compassion for those that fall on their face, providing it's not their fault, because they don't understand how to be organized and do the administrative stuff. I don't have compassion for those that were Johnny Salty firemen and the best captain in the world, and then they put on the chief's rank, and they're like, well, I shouldn't have to worry about pushing a desk. That's not my job. Well, on the contrary, it is. You don't ride the engine anymore, so shut your mouth and learn your new job. Otherwise, you can be demoted. So there is that. I'm glad you brought this up, because there's this major gap in the importance of training our administrators how to be administrators, and that encompasses not just reporting and data entry and data tracking and all that, but it also is the psychological and the sociological. I can't even say that right, but you know what I mean. The sociology part of dealing with people. You have to be able to understand there's a certain new level of ethics that go along with being an administrator, that you could say or do things when you're a captain that you certainly can't do when you're a chief officer. And we're not training those folks, and we're not teaching them, the way they need to do that. You have somebody that has a habit for 20 years of how they conduct business, and then when they put on this new rank of a chief officer position, it's a different habit that they have to control. Well, how am I going to effectively teach that person to change those habits? I can't just assume they're going to change it, and that's where we fail. I'm not going to go long-winded, so obviously I'll pass it back to you, but I do want to talk about the pride thing that you had brought up before too. So, but I'm assuming you'll have something to respond to what I just said. But then before you wrap up, I do want to talk about that pride piece too, because that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to kind of trail into what you had talked about. I remember when I was a master firefighter and I sat for the lieutenant's test, and as I was getting promoted, my captain at the time, when I was a master, kind of started to help me understand the admin side of the job. And then I got promoted to lieutenant to a dual service house, which had an engine and a truck on the other side of the county. And I didn't know anybody at the station. I mean, I was a brand new lieutenant, didn't know anybody there. And the captain that was assigned there was detailed to the training academy to teach during the day, and then he was off at night. So for the first 2.5 to 3 months, I was the only officer at that station that I was unfamiliar with the area, didn't know the people, and there was a lot of admin stuff like payroll and things like that. We were still using paper timesheets that had to be batched and put together and things like that. So I relied heavily on being able to call my captain back, whose name was John Gallo, and say, hey, I don't know how to batch timesheets, or I can't remember how to do it. So he would walk me through the process, and I found myself calling him for different things because they don't have admin classes that firefighters can take to learn how to be an officer. You know, like you said, riding the fire engine is 10%. The rest of the 90% is mundane paperwork. But I would call him, and he was so gracious enough to walk me through the process and give me his experiences of how to do stuff, that as time moved forward, a few weeks moved forward, I was calling him less and less, to the point where I felt like I had my feet underneath of me. Running the calls was the easy thing. I had really experienced drivers that knew where they were going, walked me through alarm systems, elevators, things like that, based on their experiences. So it was really a positive. It was a positive impact on me to be able to have that network of being able to call people. And we fast forward to I get promoted to captain. I feel comfortable being a captain because the paperwork's still the same. And when I was getting ready to sit down and take my battalion, was going to take the battalion chief's test. John Gallo, who was my captain at the time, was already a battalion chief, and he spent the next 2 or 3 months just teaching me how to work the tactical worksheets as an incident commander. I was never familiar with them. I didn't know anything about them. How to chart, how to track your people. So he really took a lot of time. I would say just about every shift we would spend a couple of hours on that. He gave me DVDs or CDs of calls that he ran so I could listen to the box alarms. I could track the units to where I got comfortable. So when I sat down to take that battalion chief's test, I already felt comfortable with that stuff. So to me, that is leadership through training. That is somebody that's taking the time to set your subordinates up for success as they move forward. And I never forgot about that, and I try to do that myself when it comes time for these guys that are wanting to take the lieutenants and the captains and the battalion chiefs test, where I would either have them come into the academy, we'd get a classroom and we'd just talk about it, or when the pandemic hit, I would do stuff on Teams or Zoom or Skype where we could just do video stuff and have people, and we just talk about what it was to be a lieutenant, the things that you need to know to be a captain or a battalion chief. So I always tried to pay that forward. But that really helped me not only understand what it was like to set the future up for success, but also, this was done for me, and I owe that. I have to pay that forward. So before we wrap up, you wanted to talk about pride. So let's dig into that and let me know some of your thoughts on that as that translates into being a leader in an organization.
Yeah, no problem. I'll bounce from both of the topic you just discussed and the pride piece. So I'll end it with the leadership through training, just because that's a sexy way to end your show. But what do you call it? The pride piece. You had made the comment before about how people have pride in their department, pride in their crew, and all that stuff. And this is important but like you had discussed about not having that blind pride. So pride's good. Us having that humility, us helping build our leaders up, that affects our crew. So I say, and on my podcast last night, I was talking to my buddy Billy, and he was, saying about how he wants to always make ladder 7 look good in FDNY, and that's important, is the company number. So like where I work, we're company 13, and I tell the guys, like they don't care about the individual who made the mistake. The perception is 13 made the mistake. So we had a fire yesterday, and unfortunately the guys they didn't lay out. And it's okay. It's not okay, but it's okay. It's okay because this is a corrective measure. Nobody got hurt. Nothing happened. The fire went out. Our guys were able to work. So there's no harm, no foul in that. However, we're not going to dismiss what happened because we need to correct it. And that's going to be through training and education and discussion of the importance and value of those type of things. But the text messages that I received during and after weren't about the individual who was riding the front seat or who was driving, missing their assignment. It was that 13 missed the assignment. And that is where the pride thing, we have to be proud of our company number. It's like your father's last name. Your father gave you a last name, don't screw it up. So when we have a company number or a department name on our front shield, on our helmet, or on our coat, that's our dad's last name. Don't screw it up. You need to be proud of your crew. You need to be proud of who's going to be the incident commander because they're part of your crew. You need to be proud of your company number, and that pride piece is important because it hopefully sets the incentive for you to want to do better because you don't want to look like shit in the public eye or amongst your peers in your response areas. You don't want, them thinking, oh crap, 13's coming. You know what that means? No. What that means is that we're showing up and we're going to get shit done for you. That's what that means. So that's what that pride thing is. But the flip side of that is the same as the word passion. Passion in the dictionary has two literally completely different definitions in the dictionary. One of them talks about it being a thing of great excitement and willingness to do things, and then the other one talks about it being blind rage. So it's like, oh, okay. That pride piece, like in the Bible, sin will take you to your knees and pride will keep you there, pride cometh before the fall. There's another side of the pride sword. It's a double-edged sword, so you got to be cognizant of that. You got to be careful of that. If you have too much pride, your ego takes in, and then you start to cloud your perception. You start to get tunnel vision, and you become unaware of your surroundings, and then that leaves no room for growth because you're so enveloped in pride that you think that you've got it all figured out and that you're the best there is and the best there was and the best there ever will be, like Bret Hart would say, right? And the reality is you're not, and then you become subject to failure. So this wasn't the case with what happened with our guys not laying out, but the point is had that have been the case, then that would have been a completely different discussion that I would have had and the rest of the leaders here would have had to have with this particular individual or his crew at the time. If they had gone into it blindly because they were full of pride and thought, well, we got to figure it out, we know what the hell we're doing, the conversation wouldn't be corrective measures in a more compassionate, sympathetic environment and delivery. It would have been more stern, and it would have been like, look, how's that egg on your face feel? You're the one throwing stones, and look what happened. That's where that pride piece can get you in trouble, is because you become unaware of your surroundings by being so full of that pride. So like I said, it's completely okay for you to have pride in your company number and your department name and your crew. Those are important things because it gives you the incentive to do better. but don't have the other side of the pride sword, where you're completely blind to your surroundings, and you're subject to failure. With the leading through training thing, I'll tell you, it is very important. Training and leadership go hand in hand. So I'm writing a book. One of the chapters is actually titled "Training Officers Are Leaders Too." So there's a few things to cover in this. Is one, if you are training someone, you are literally, by definition, leading someone. People are following what it is that you're saying. They're following your lead. They're following your direction, and you are trying to develop those people, to do better and build a new skill set, or at least improve on the skill set that they might already have, or refresh that skill set, right? It also is important in how we build our leaders is through training. Yes, it's through experience. Great incident commanders become great because they've experienced different types of calls where they've had hardships and things go wrong, and that's how they build an awareness of what not to do. It's like in Batman when Bruce's dad Thomas Wayne says to him, "Bruce, why do we fall? To teach ourselves to get back up." So experience is important, because why do we fall? It's to teach ourselves to get back up, right? But also, you have to train your people, and it is an ever-going process. Nobody is perfect. We train on things in the operational skill set, like technical rescue. If you're not out performing tech rescue all the time, but you have a mission for that, that's a perishable skill. So you need to have frequency in that training, right? So it's the same thing with leadership. You're not always the incident commander. You're not always having to reprimand somebody. You're not always having to do administrative duties. So if we're not training these people, it becomes a perishable skill. So it has to be an ever-going thing. Leaders need to continue to train just as much as firefighters need to continue to train. And we need to train those firefighters how to also become leaders, so that when they take on those roles and responsibilities, they understand it. So leadership and training, they go hand in hand. They're the same thing. You need to continue to learn and train on things as your leader. And us as leaders, we need to develop an environment where we are training our future leaders and our current leaders and keeping them fresh. Excuse me. And we need to continuously train ourselves in how to be better at what we do and learn all the new things that are going on, because our crews look to us for that direction. So if we don't know, then they're not going to know, and then they become kind of passive to it, and that passiveness becomes what? Complacency. And then what does complacency turn into? It turns into fatality, and we end up having somebody injured or hurt in the field. So leadership and training, they go hand in hand. They're both important, and they should technically be synonymous if you were to ask me, because they're the same. And again, if you're an instructor or a training officer, or even if you're a company officer, or you're the SME, subject matter expert, on your crew, and you're hosting a training evolution and you're the lead instructor, keyword lead, you're leading the instruction, you're leading the methodology and the training content. Training officers are leaders too.
Well, I can't sum it up any better than that. And Dave, I appreciate you coming on the show. There's a lot of great information that the listeners will take from this. Go ahead and give a shout out again to your company and where they can find you on through social media.
Oh, thank you, brother. One, thank you for having me. I love you, man. I appreciate it. You and I have hit it off over the past few years. I really enjoyed, having you as a friend and somebody in my Rolodex. So thanks for having me. But yeah, I appreciate that. So I'm on Twitter under Chief_McGlynn, McGlynn. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn under Dave McGlynn. But my company name is Passion in Leading. And you can find that on Facebook and Instagram, Passion in Leading LLC. And yeah, anybody who wants to follow or exchange information or reach out to me for whatever, if I can get back to you, if there's anything that you want to talk about, I'll probably pick your brain more than you'll pick mine, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm willing to network and communicate with anybody. So I appreciate that plug. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show. And for my listeners, if you want to find out more about Side Alpha Leadership, you can go to my website at sidealphaleadership.com. You can also find Side Alpha Leadership on Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook. A lot of good content on all three of those platforms. So with that, Dave, thanks for being on the show, and I will keep in touch, and be safe out there.